All right. Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Sean, and I'm very glad to be here. This is my first time in Korea, and I'm excited to see all of you. We have a full room, and I hope you are eager to hear about what we're doing, not just in OpenStack. So we just heard about what we're doing in a software-defined storage, but now let's do a quick shift to software-defined networking and NFV, which is our next topic. So let's start with some data, and a lot of data. And all of you have smartphones, and believe it or not, by 2021, each one of you and your kids will be using 6 times more traffic in their smartphones. And if we put all of the smartphones' data together, we'll basically get to something like 10 times increase of what we actually have today in terms of growth. What it means in terms of subscription. So this is pretty much awesome. I mean, it's like not just every one of our kids have smartphones. By 2021, my dog will have a smartphone, right? We have 9 billion mobile subscriptions. And overall, we see like 85%, right, of subscription will be for mobile broadband. What does it mean? It means that data is exploding, right? We generate more data, we're taking more pictures, we stream more videos, and at the end of the day, the infrastructure that actually hosts this needs to adapt. And that's something that's pretty painful, believe it or not, because we need to change the way we operate. In fact, if we don't change now the way we operate, we cannot keep up, right? So today's session is basically helping us to address the movement that is already happening underneath our feet. And NFV is one of the biggest and hottest topics in today's industry because of it. So if you look at what we have today, and in a sense I'm referring to what we have today as already as legacy, because we have done a lot of investments in specific hardware solutions when it comes to network solutions that ended up in islands and islands of hardware with a specific vendor locking that simply cannot scale, right? If we now need to take the traditional investments we used to have in being a service provider, right, and translate it to today's demand, we will simply bankrupt. We cannot afford it, right? So it means two things. We need to lower our cost, right? We need to find more ways to lower the cost to deliver our service. We need to be able to scale, right? If I need to introduce a new service, maybe a video service for the next Olympics game, right? I can already know that by the time Seoul will host the next Olympics, the number of subscription will grow. I already can analyze and do this capacity planning ahead. And the thing is, if I'm not going to invest today, I will not be able to keep up. So I need ways to actually allow me to deploy new service faster and scalable. All right, think about it. Till now, if I need to, in traditional world, or traditional service providing, if I need to introduce a new service, and I'm using still the hardware model, I would need to send someone on site to offload from a truck a hardware, connect the hardware to the data center, and by the time I actually introduce this new service in today's game, I may be losing the business already. All right, so what is NFV? NFV stands for 3 words, right? So it's Network Function Virtualization. And the last part of it is we basically replacing this old hardware solutions with a virtualized one. So think about it. Even in your home, you have routers, right, for your wireless. We basically replacing each one of these network components. It can be a router, it could be a NAS translator, DNS, encryption, endpoint, switch, right? All of these network components are now being replaced with a virtual appliance. So we're moving from a hardware to virtualization. And in a sense, by moving to the right, we are simplifying already the equation. We are able to lower costs because we're starting to use commodity hardware. So instead of using different proprietary hardware for each one of our solutions, we can actually use standard hardware. Pick your vendor, your favorite vendor, it doesn't matter. But you can actually run and connect this hardware now to your software stack. And the only difference is that the virtual appliances that will run, that will be from different vendors. So we already now, by moving to a virtual level, we're solving the hardware problem and we're lowering cost, right? And by moving to independent storage vendor, I can actually open the door for more and more solution to be flexible and deploy. The time it takes me to deploy a virtual machine is not the time it takes me to stand up a new hardware. It's much more faster, let alone if I do it in a container today, right? So if we look at NFV evolution, so it started something like 4 years ago, and in September 2014, the European Telecommunication Standards Institute, the ETSI, put it together a framework, a reference model for NFV. And if we look at the NFV model, so we have all the lower end, which is now virtualized layer. This used to be hardware. This used to be our hardware stack, and instead we have virtual computing, virtual storage, virtual network. We basically, this is our virtualization layer that in time connects to different virtual appliances. Another thing that the ETSI model introduced is the orchestration, what we call basically the MANO layer, which is management and organization, that allows us to orchestrate these different virtualized appliances for networking. The benefits we get just by moving to this model are huge. So first of all, we are much more flexible, and we can lower the cost substantially because we just lifted all the hardware dependency from the game, right? We can actually, every virtual appliance vendor can basically now introduce services much more faster, and I, as an operator, can pick a new service and deploy it instantly in a cloud fashion. And by doing so, by connecting it to a cloud platform, I can actually scale unlimited always. I only need to have is more startup hardware when I roll this new service in and instantly stand up a new virtual appliance as I need it, on demand, in a cloud fashion. So my delivery time is reduced. My time to market is reduced. And basically, I've eliminated the single vendor dependency. So think about it, the cost was a main driven, right? Going back to my first slide. By moving to this model, we basically checkbox the cost of the hardware, the ease of deploying the software, so the time to market increase, and we have more choices of different vendors open up for us, right? This is a big change. And if we look at what role does open source in general plays in this game is huge. So first of all, if we look at pretty much another poll that we did back in 2014, 83 of the telco operators demand basically prefer open systems, right? So if we look into the future, we know that we need to grow our business. We would like to have as many options we have rather than limit ourselves into a single solution, right? Frame. This is why open source is so key, right? If we look at the operators that operates, 95% basically thinks that the move for NFV with open source is positive. And the main reason I said earlier is we actually can now stand up new modern applications in a cloud native applications introduced. In a sense, the telco industry was a bit of behind with the rapid movement in the software industry. And now with this move, we're not just able to breach this gap, but also start to innovate. We're going to see much more disruptive technologies thanks to NFV. And if we look at one of the key communities, if you're a new member to NFV world and you want to participate, the best place I can recommend you to participate is upstream. And the biggest projects we have currently in the OpenStream community for NFV is the OpenNFV, that basically took the ETSI model that we have on the left and basically now moved to work together upstream with a lot of competitors working together, different companies working together, and individual contributors basically helping to integrate, test, and introduce new feature much more faster. So in a sense, if I need to innovate, if I innovate alone, I have very minimal impact. If we innovate together as a community, we have a huge impact, and we can actually do much more rapid movement. Open source is not new to us. Being Red Hat, we are the largest open source company on planet Earth today. And everything we're doing is upstream first. So in a sense, even if we acquire companies, Sebastian mentioned Inktank acquisition earlier in the Ceph case, we soon enough open source it, right? We spent something like $200 million on ManageIQ acquisition. Now it's become a product as I named CloudForms. And one of the interesting things we've done with ManageIQ, a month after we acquired it for $200 million, we opened up the software for free, right? How many companies are able to do it today? And the reason is we believe in this model. We believe in the power of participation. If you look anywhere, this is it. This is our motto, and it actually works. And it works throughout 100,000 upstream open source projects we are involved in Red Hat. It's not just the OpenNFV, it's all of them. All right? And so open source is in our DNA. And if you would like to impact OpenStack, specifically with NFV, it actually doesn't stop in OpenStack. A lot of the innovations we're doing for the NFV world is happening, first of all, in the Linux space, in the KVM and QEMU space, in libvirt, in OpenVSwitch, in DPDK. All of these are sub-projects that come along together. Open Daylight, Ceph, as we mentioned. Ceph, for example, one of the use cases that Sebastian has covered, hyperconverge, is a very hot NFV use case. So in a sense, our strategy for open source is to treat it not as a customized solution, right? We're not just doing NFV OpenStack as a solution. We have a product strategy. And what it means is that we're delivering throughout the stack. For us to deliver NFV is basically deliver OpenStack, KVM, right? Linux kernel as well. A lot of the innovations we've done in the last releases actually happened in RHEL before it happened in OpenStack. How many vendors are out there in the world that are able to do it? And if you look at each one of these projects, the Newton release for OpenStack was just released a week ago. If you go to Google and you write top contributors to Newton, no shock there, Red Hat is the top contributor for OpenStack, right? Commits, reviews, etc. And it's been done for a lot of releases. Who's the top contributor for KVM? Who's the top contributor to QEMU? Who's the top contributor to any one of this project? Yes, it's Red Hat. And the reason is, it's not just it's in our DNA, it's in our product strategy, because at the end of the day, we need to support it, and we need to provide support throughout the stack. If you're a telco provider or a service provider, and you have a problem in your NFV component, who would you go to? To the VNF manufacturer? To a contributor in KVM to find a problem? Someone in the Linux kernel? In Red Hat's case, it's easier. There's a single vendor that basically can deal with all of that infrastructure and provide new innovation as well as bug fixes, right? Which is key. So if we look at the co-engineering, this actually allows us to not just introduce new services all across, it also allows us to do optimization in the different layers. For example, we can do optimization for performance for OpenStack NFV, but do it in RHEL, in the operating system. So our ability to impact is not just in one product line, it's throughout the stack. We treat the whole stack as one entity, in a sense, right? And this is key because we're introducing new emerging technologies, and some of them I already mentioned is containers, right? NFV virtualization in the hypervisor level is just one step. If we move forward, and I'll go there in the next slide, you see that our ability to provide support across the stack is huge, but it's not limited. So great, Red Hat is a great contributor all about the stacks. But what about everything I connect to OpenStack? Because OpenStack is all being a pluggable infrastructure. How do I make sure that my VNF application is not going to break anything in my production, right? How do I know that the hardware, new hardware component that I'm going to connect to my cloud is not going to break anything? This is why we have a very tight integration with our partners, and we also introduced a certification program that we're going to talk about later for NFVs. At the end of the game, by doing all of this, we are in a position to provide SLA, which is key for carrier-grade productions, right? And if we want to put it all together in one slide, right? So in this slide, that pretty much matches the Etsy model. Here we have the stack we saw earlier, which is the NFVI, the all infrastructure stack. And all the red components you see on the top and on the right are Red Hat software, right? However, if you look at the VNF specifically, we have the certified VNF that's running on top. It's running on top of inside the guest of RHEL, which is the operating system, but we also have the DPDK inside the VNF. So we have very tight integration stack with the virtual appliances. Another new member of the family is now containers. Now you can actually start running VNFs inside containers hosted by OpenShift. We have a very tight integration with OpenShift with a PaaS offering. So you can run OpenShift on top of OpenStack and basically leverage all of the different services similar to what we have in compute, storage, and networking. And one of the things we're doing in the future, as I'm going to talk about earlier, is actually opening the door for more and more development around this use case that opens, again, more use cases for virtual appliances. And on the right, we have our own platforms offering for managing hybrid cloud with a lot of innovations for orchestration. But as you can see, all of the blue stacks is basically Red Hat partners, right? TSANet basically allows us to run validated VNFs with a shared support model. So if I'm running any third-party VNF, you can actually call Red Hat to provide you end-to-end support, and we will, behind the scenes, integrate with that partner. And of course, also when it comes to the Mano stack, we have all the different vendors. If we look at the VNFI, we have all the certified OpenStack plugins, right? So Sebastian covered OpenStack storage, all the different plugins you can connect to Cinder, Manila, etc. If we look at the networking, we have similar plugins. So you can use either, for example, the software-defined networking, we have like OVS, or you can have a certified plugin hardware that basically connects to it. So in a sense, this showcase pretty much how we integrate with all of the OpenStack platform to deliver NFV, but also with the partners world. And speaking of partners, as you can see, this also maps very nicely. So we have all the different Red Hat NFV partners, and you can see this all the different VNF players on top. On the right, we have all the different Mono partners, and at the bottom, the different SDN and SDS plugins we have out of the box. And what's our go-to-market? So if you look at the go-to-market for NFV, we basically have a dual mode, where on the left side, I'm going to showcase earlier, we have more than one option. So you can work with direct customers as well as OEMs that I'm going to talk about in a second. All of these partners basically can now go ahead and certify with either the OpenStack platform plugins directly or the VNF certifications. And at the end of the day, what we bring up is a joint support flow, and basically we stand behind this production-grade support. So this is just some of the names for the dual mode NFV go-to-market. So on the left, we have basically shared solutions, if you will, with the OpenStack platform NFV solution with NEC, Dell, Nokia, Cisco. And on the right is some of the latest public examples, such as Orange and Verizon Wireless. We have Barcelona Summit coming up later this month, where we're going to announce another big name joining these companies. And with that, I want to basically take us to the future. So we'll start with where we are today. As you can see on the left side, we have the VNF, and then Mano and VNFI, which is the infrastructure layer. And today, if we start at the top, OpenStack platform basically already allows you to deploy a lot of the core features that we saw earlier, such as the DPDK, etc., and all the different EAP capabilities around the NUMA awareness and CPU pinning, etc. And tomorrow, which is pretty much the next major release of OpenStack that's going to be announced later this month. We're going to have the more performance improvements around the fast data path. And in the future, as I mentioned earlier, we have a lot of focus now on enablement containers as part of the stack. So VNF actually can ride on a container, inside a container, not just as a virtual machine. Our plan is to release to the community SDK for containers, and we're currently working on this. And if you look at the Mano stack, so we have our platform offering for hybrid Manogel. Our focus for the next release is basically introducing a lot of NFV-specific operational tools, and in the future, basically open more the door to do more tight integration, orchestration for the VNF applications. And if we look at the VNFI at the bottom, so here's basically everything we have already today in the infrastructure. The next major release, OpenStack Platform 10 that's coming up, is going to support out of the box the OVS DPDK and SRIFV using Director. Director is our deployment tool. And the key area for the future in this area is basically introducing a lot of carrier-grade capabilities, including service function chaining, security, distributed NFV, which is a huge use case that allows us to basically have a single control plane for all of the distributed NFV that can be different sites as well, but in a single control plane. That's a very important one, and it will connect as well to the Mano, of course. Reliability, availability, and serviceability, and of course a lot of new supports coming up, like ARM support, which is also big for a lot of the partners. And with that, I just want to bring it all together, right? So we talked about what's NFV. We talked about why Red Hat for NFV, and we talked about pretty much the Red Hat strategy. And I think Red Hat is actually, is one of the only companies actually today in planet Earth that is able to provide this whole service chain, right? So, stable, secure, and supported release. If you want to find more, please join us at redhat.com NFV. And see us after the booth. And as Sebastian mentioned, both of us will be available to sign some copies of our OpenStack books. All right, thank you very much.